There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean Breathes Books. Welcome back to my channel and another Friday Reads. I have a funny story about what an imbecile I am about practical matters. But anyway, I'm sitting in the shade and I hope I'm not too shaded, but we'll maybe sort it all out in post-production. But I was today years old when I realized, and I'm still not entirely sure if I'm right, does the sun rise in the east and set in the west? I was making a big song and dance last week about how I didn't do it on Thursday night because the sun would be dimming and it wouldn't be so bright in my eyes. But actually, there's several benches on this side of the pond with the sun behind me in the morning. So I guess the sun does rise in the east, and so it's not in my eyes in the morning. This particular bench is lovely, but there's no sun. If I move over to the other one, there'll be a little bit of sun, and I'll sort it all out eventually. Hello, welcome back. I have so much news, most of it personal, and I was hoping Kenji would join me for a couple minutes to say hello, and he's jet lagged. He's still fighting with it, so he said, can we do it next week, just a few minutes ago, and I said, absolutely. So here's a picture. Kenji arrived Saturday, and with his long hair, which I could see it on some of the video chats, he often has a cap on and you can't see it, but it's new to me. And so Mom and I were sitting there right at the arrivals gate and he walked right up to us before we noticed it was him. Anyway, that was funny. It was just a beautiful reunion, and I'm not going to get into anything too personal or emotional, but it has just been an absolutely beautiful week, I have to say. There's lots of things I was worried about, and I'm not going to itemize them here, and none of those things have happened, and the connection is stronger in a way than it ever was. We're just so connected. I am sleeping better, and I had a kind of a skin thing, and it started to clear up on its own. I think I'd been really stressed and really worried and really lonely for 3 years, and I didn't realize how much. So this has just been a really, never mind all that other bliss I kept talking about, this is real bliss, and I'll limit my comments to that. But I am delighted to be living in our new home with him the first week. He's struggling with jet lag, but otherwise happy as all get out, and I'm even happier. So you will see him one of these days, probably next week. And in the meantime, we'll just carry on. There's just no issue. Kenji's watching his anime movies. He's either wearing headphones or I'm wearing headphones, and I'm audiobooking, and we're in the same room, and we have no interests in common. And we can share space and do that, and it's just beautiful. So I love it. I love it. So I actually feel like I want to read more now that he's with me. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. I don't think I have any other personal news. Sometimes true bliss is not very newsworthy. It has been just incredible to have him here and to be back together. So, without further ado. Oh, actually, one further ado. Please bear with me for 30 seconds. I have 3 new bookmarks that I've designed and I'm selling on my channel to help me buy more books. They're lovely. The people that have purchased them or received them for free because they're top-tier patrons on Patreon are raving about them. Here they are on the screen. I would love it if you would order 1 or 2 or 3 or a dozen. Check my show notes for more info. Thanks for letting me share. Speaking of loneliness and togetherness and writing and creativity, oh my God, let's meet this week's mystery guest. And this week's mystery guest is Joshua Jones, a queer neurodivergent writer and artist, joining us today from Cardiff in Wales. Hello, Joshua. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's so great to meet you. And Joshua is the author of the November 2023 short story collection, Local Fires, which is a collection, I understand, of linked short stories, and it was shortlisted for the Dylan Thomas Prize and the Polari First Book Prize. Joshua, tell us about this collection.
Yes, Local Fires is a collection of all based in my hometown of Llanelli in southwest Wales. For anyone who has absolutely no idea or never heard of the town before, it's a sort of ex-industrial working class coastal town on the South Wales coast. It's mainly known for its tin plate industry, and it's still a tin plate industry there now. It still produces quite a lot of the UK's aluminium, but it was also heavily involved in the near in coal and steel industries, and all of that in classic British fashion went to shit under Thatcher in the 80s. And I grew up there until my parents are still there and my entire family. But yeah, I live in Cardiff now, which is the capital city of Wales.
And it's a series of linked short stories or a short story cycle.
Yeah, mainly linked by character more than plot or
Yeah.
story. So a character that might be like a main character in one story is in the background, maybe like floating around in another, because I wanted to get that sense of everyone knowing each other and everyone knows each other's business. It's gossipy and you can't get away with anything and it's stifling, which is very much how it felt growing up. There's this one instant that really sticks with me. And to this day, I don't really know. Well, me and a bunch of friends were playing around in my bedroom, which at the time was in the attic, the loft of the house. And they dared me to get up on the roof because I had a sort of latch window that opened onto a slant. So I went up and climbed onto the roof, and then my parents knew about it and grounded me. So the back of the house opens out onto like football, soccer field. Do you say football or soccer? I don't know in Canada.
We call it soccer, yeah.
Right, okay, yeah. So football, soccer field, and in the background, up behind that, fields and a cemetery. They told me that a neighbor, someone on the other side, past the soccer field and everything, saw me from a few miles away and told them. So I spent my whole kind of childhood feeling that I couldn't get away with anything.
That's very relatable. I grew up in small town Western Canada, and I think probably my hometown is smaller than yours. My hometown, the population is 150 people.
Oh wow, yeah, that is significantly. Yeah, that's not. Can I even be called a town?
It's a
That
village. Absolutely, it's a village. Yeah. And so,
that's not.
what's the population of? I'm not going to try to pronounce your hometown name.
It's quite confusing because when you Google it, it seems like a high volume of people. I think online it says something like 30,000, but like it takes in all of the villages
Yeah.
and settlements around. It can feel, I think with a lot of Welsh towns, they can feel smaller than they actually are. My town especially felt almost like there was a fishbowl over it. There was this sort of small town mentality, and this mentality of we've got it bad.
My next question is why you chose to write a short story cycle, and it's been extremely successful and lots of great response. Why didn't you write a novel?
I had zero intention of writing a novel.
Okay.
And I did have people saying to me, why not turn this into a novel? But first of all, there's the actual physical act of writing. I'm autistic and I have ADHD. So there's issues to do with like attention span and I think quite fragmentary. So it felt like it just made sense to write how I think and see the world. So yeah, I wrote in a sort of fragmented way because that's just how I think. And also, I can't remember who said, and I think it was Fred Osborne who said that the short story is a voice for lonely people.
That's interesting
Might
comment. Yeah.
might be butchering that quote, but it was interesting to me to have if you have 15 short stories or whatever, then that's 15 lonely people in a room together. So yeah, it just felt interesting to me. I didn't necessarily know that quote and think that way going into it. It's more like I've been able to give voice to my reasons after the fact.
So you identify as a queer writer, a neurodivergent writer, an artist, and I'm assuming to a certain degree you identify as a Welsh writer. Am I right about that? If I call you a Welsh writer, will you take that?
Yes.
Okay, so how much of those identities are explored through the characters or the storylines of Local Fires?
Yeah, all of them.
All of them. Great.
Yeah, when I was on my, I guess I have to the word journey, explore my own queerness, when I was like heavily in the writing of Local Fires. I did the bulk of the writing during lockdown in 2020. At the time, I hadn't been diagnosed with autism for very long. So in 2020, I was, how old would I be? I was like 23, 24, and I got diagnosed with autism when I was 21, I think. So I was still really unpacking that and trying to find a community, and I was receiving support while studying for my education for the first time. And then my partner at the time, who I lived with, was starting on the journey of discovering that they were neurodivergent, exploring their queer identity as well, exploring different usage of pronouns and things like that. So yeah, creating this sort of safe, protective space for the two of us just to explore these things together. And I also had my writing to explore it in as well. So I feel like my conversations with friends and family found their way into the book, into the stories. Some of it is like my workings out on paper about various aspects of my identity. I've thought a lot about what it means to be a Welsh writer since the book came out because I wasn't thinking about that at all when writing it. I didn't think that I was going to be part of the canon of Welsh literature or something. I've had that since, and it's been a weird experience for me. Like, there's one review that basically said that they were disappointed if this is the next best Welsh novel or literature or whatever. And I was just like, who's expecting that? I'm certainly not trying to write the next best Welsh book or whatever. I was just trying to figure things out for myself. I wonder if there is this sort of expectation within Celtic writing across Wales, Ireland, and Scotland. If there's always what's going to be the next best Irish book, what's going to be the next best Welsh, Scottish book. I don't think the English care about that as much.
I can relate to it in terms of Canadian literature, the next best Canadian novel or whatever, but you can ignore that stupid review from a Welsh critic. The Wales Art Review, as you well know, because it's on the back of the book, the Wales Arts Review described it as a beautiful portrait of a characterful town. So there you go.
Yeah, that was nice of them.
So in a way, writing was therapeutic or whatever the word would be. You wrote about a lot of the issues the experiences that you were having. Would the adjective autobiographical fit this collection?
Yeah, quite a few people have asked how autobiographical is it? How, is this autofiction? And those sorts of things are almost reductive. I think all good writing explores the author's truth. That's not a universal truth. It's just how they are processing the world and stimuli around them. And at the time, when I did the bulk of the writing, I was living in Bristol in England.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd lived in England since I moved away from home when I was 18. So yeah, about 5 or 6 years. And I was really craving like moving back to Wales. I wanted to hear people who speak like me, who have my sense of humor, who have had the same sort of upbringing. I was missing all that, which I didn't expect to miss when I was 18, 19. And I was really interrogating for myself, what does Welshness mean? And how can I be proud of being Welsh without it being like a sort of nationalist, patriotic thing? I was thinking of all these sorts of things, which then I think are there in the book. There's characters who move back to Llanelli after living away for a while. This character's desperate to leave. So I think that tension, that sort of push and pull of home is very present.
Tell us about one or two of the main characters, and I think you have a passage you're going to read for us. You can set that up as well.
Yeah, so I'll read from Tommy, the last 3 paragraphs of the story. This is Tommy. The wind has picked up since just a couple of hours ago. Tommy struggles to push open the fire door against the gust of air that whips through the widening gap between it and the frame. He steps through the door and closes it behind him. The plain wooden cross bolted to his front looks down on him piously as he tries to light his cigarette. The front gates of the job centre opposite are padlocked shut. The street is empty of people, one for sale sign after the next. The bins to one side of the stone garden overflow. Pigeons pick at grey slivers of chips until a couple of seagulls drop down and bully them to leave. Tommy's hands are clammy on the flint of his lighter. He wipes them on his jeans. He looks at the gulls fighting, the stone garden. He can't remember the proper name of it, if it ever had one. Not an actual garden, just a large circle leading from the pavement to the park with benches made of large slabs of stone around the circumference. There are cemeteries more pleasing to the eye. But looking at and thinking about the stone garden is distracting him from the York Palace, just a few doors down. He sees one of his drinking partners standing outside, his creaking leather jacket, as always, zipped over the barrel of his gut. Tommy must have known his name once. The man raises his pint glass to him across the way in friendly greeting. The golden liquid sings to Tommy, more beautiful than any bird song. The wind picks up, seems to be blowing in the direction of the pub. The clouds threaten rain, like the weather wants him holed up in a warm, dry corner with a drink. Cup in his hands to shield the lightest flame from the wind, Tommy thinks about what he could cook for coffee tonight. Something hearty, slow cooked. Something that says, "We'll be okay. I'm sorry. I love you." The sparks flicker in the wind, but they don't catch light. He gives up trying to light his cigarette. He leans into the wind and he begins to walk home. So that's the last sort of section of Tommy, about a character called Tommy who's originally from Liverpool, and he spent a good few years sort of traveling around as a tradesman before finding love and settling in Llanelli. And Tommy has a sort of problem with drinking, is alcohol dependent, and he goes to the local meeting as an attempt to quit drinking and prove to his wife Kathy that he can. So that was the first story that I wrote, or at least the first draft of a story that I wrote for Local Fires, which I started writing in the summer of 2019, I believe. Yeah, it's based on my grandmother's ex-husband, who unfortunately died from his alcoholism. So this for me was like almost kind of like writing on an alternative history, alternative future, where he managed to curb his alcoholism and turn the page.
One sentence really just so powerful. The golden liquid sings to Tommy, more beautiful than any bird song. Great line.
Yeah. And a huge part of me really wanted to interrogate the drinking culture of British people are known for. Britain's known for its drinking culture. There's also kind of competition between Wales and Ireland, Scotland and England of who are the biggest drinkers.
Okay.
And I think traditionally, when you had people working in the mines, you had to sort of the triangle of work, home, and the pub, and that was your life. And when industry left the area and was shut down, a lot of towns was just faced with this identity crisis because they prided on themselves as being places of work, of industry. And there's none of that. What do you have left? And then, yeah, and most of them haven't recovered, and it's been decades. But when my parents are really young, my parents had me when they were 19. I was born in 1996. My parents were teenagers in the 90s, which is like weirds me out. But in the late, they say that in the 90s and into the early 2000s, Connectly had a big like drinking scene where everyone from like the neighboring towns and villages would all come into Connectly to drink. These days, it's Swansea, which is our nearest city. That's gone. Most of there's so many pubs and places closed down and empty. So yeah, I really wanted to interrogate, not just in this story, but I think throughout the collection, this history with alcohol and the dependency on it, and also like my history with drinking as well.
What do your parents think of this book, Local Fires?
Mum says that she would like it if I wrote something nice,
Oh, okay.
and I still haven't written anything nice yet. Maybe one day. I think there are parts of it that were maybe painful to them. I felt like I was very honest and didn't really hold much back in writing these. I think if I was writing them now, I'd maybe distance myself a little bit and maybe fictionalize things a little bit more. But they could see that I needed to write this book for me. And especially stories like How Would Clive Owen Feel? Which, yeah, that I started writing that years and years ago. And it's primarily coming to deal with starting the process of receiving an autism diagnosis. So I think they were able to put their own feelings aside and feel proud of me for being able to articulate something that I needed to say creatively.
And what are you working on now, Joshua?
I'm working on the novel. Some of the sections in the novel I started writing at the same time as Local Fires, and there's other sections that I wrote. I started writing like this week. I don't want to give away too much. I'm also like
No,
trying
no.
to figure out how to talk about it because it's set between 2015 and 2022, but there's a lot of melding of time and space and memory and physical space and metaphysical space. Most of it takes place on train journeys. So yeah, there's not much of a sort of narrative, but about a person's journey of self-discovery. There's a theme in my work.
And you're also a poet.
Yeah.
Would you describe your prose writing as poetic?
I would. I started writing poetry long before I started writing prose. I also used to be involved in spoken word circles and performing poetry way more than I do now, especially when I moved away for university. And yeah, I used to perform on the same bill as like hardcore and punk bands. That's where I learned how to write and how to perform, and where I developed appreciation for the sound of writing. Poetry is still where I'm drawn to. I can be anywhere and write poetry if I'm in the park or if I'm on the bus. To write prose, I'm sat at the desk with my laptop.
Right.
But I hope that thinking poetically or my interest in sound and cadence comes through in prose as well.
It sure did in the passage that you read to us, yes. I think you have some books to recommend.
Yes, I do. I'm going to recommend two Welsh books
Excellent.
because I think anywhere in the world probably has at least heard of Dylan Thomas,
Yeah.
but may not necessarily know any other Welsh writing. So yeah, both of these are Welsh choices. These are two of my favorite novels of all time.
Great.
Not not just because they're Welsh, but because I genuinely think they're incredible. So the first one, the Welsh name is Un Nos Ola Liad, which translates to One Moonlit Night by Caradog Prichard. It was originally published in Welsh in the 1960s, I think either 1963 or 65. And it wasn't published in English until the 90s. But it's just incredible. It's so bleak and melancholic and dark. I always describe it as the nightmare version of Dylan Thomas's Under Milkwood.
Okay. That's
Yeah, it's not easy reading, and I love that. Without giving anything away.
yeah, it's an easy book to spoil, so we won't talk about the ending.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I really love it. It's really atmospheric. It shows how tough and how impoverished certain Welsh communities have been in the past and can be now. My second choice is Shifts by Christopher Meredith.
Ooh, I don't know that one at all.
It's more contemporary than One Moonlit Night. I can't remember when exactly, but yeah, it's like late 90s, I think.
I
Or
think it says here 1988. It's coming up on online.
that makes sense to me. When Local Fires came out, quite a few people said to me that there's a lot of they saw Shifts by Christopher Meredith in it. I hadn't read the book up until that point. So I was like, it's great. It's great that you see comparisons. I haven't read it, so I haven't stolen anything from it or whatever. But I read it last summer when I was in America. I took it out with me, and I was like, I'm finally going to read this. And I read it, and I was like, fuck, this is amazing. And I did see the comparisons, but I felt honored to have my book compared to it because it's set right in the turn of industry. You know, by the end of the 80s and certainly going into the 90s, almost all of the collieries and the mine works in Wales were shut down. You still had steel, but the steel works were getting more and more precarious. And at the turn of the century, you had this shift into 0 hour contracts.
Oh,
And so when working in industry, it was seen as it may not be the thing that like you want, like you desire, but at least like you'll be able to have a you'll have a good job for life. You'll be able to afford a house and provide for your family. It went from where this was a given, you go into the job, you're sorted for life, into you don't know if you're gonna work this job for 3 months for a season, and you don't know if you're gonna have a job after that. It creates this really weird mentality. We've seen it now for all of this century so far, but I think it really changes your mentality where you're in a job and you know you're gonna be in that job by the end of the year, next year, 5 years from now, 20 years from now, to where you're being told that you have 3 months. It may roll on, like you may have do 3 months and then another 3 months and another 3 months, and
but you don't.
you don't know. You could work that sort of seasonal role for 5 years, where it just keeps on rolling on each time. But it can just make you feel like the rug's can be pulled out from you, like
Absolutely.
at any time. And at the same time, then you saw the rise in renting and landlordism. They went hand in hand. The change in industry, the change in the housing market, and the change in how people live their lives. That sort of shortness of work and the lack of longevity, I think, saw a rise in people going, "Oh fuck it, I'm going to spend my money and have fun." Then, so you saw a rise in a lack of laying down roots. And so it's really fascinating. Like, it's a brilliant book on how industry and the mentality towards work and everything changed. It's a sort of an ensemble cast of characters as well. So you get like this real look into the community. I would say that it's Wales's equivalent to Dubliners or Ulysses or whatever. It's incredible.
I love the fact that readers of Local Fires came up to you and said, it's reminding me of Shifts, and that you hadn't read it, and then you went and read it, and you could see the connection. Now, Shifts is one of your favorite novels. If it had been the
Yeah,
reverse, it would have been a different kind of feeling to the story, but with the way that it happened in that order, that's amazing.
absolutely. And it also taking it out of its context. Like I read it, I read most of it when I was in Texas, along the west of Texas from south to north, and driving through Texas to get back to the Midwest, and just going through oil fields. And stopping off at gas stations and seeing all of the workers going there for their lunches and covered in oil and things. And they're all primarily Mexican or non-white. And they're working really hard and like providing this infrastructure in America at a time where there's so much anti-immigrant and racist ideology. And so they're receiving all this hate and condemnation from the American government, but then they're holding up the backbone of the country. I could just see themes and ideas that are present in the book and in small town Wales, but seeing it in modern day, seeing it in America, it felt really powerful.
Joshua, this has been a really fascinating conversation. Thank you for coming on my show, and I hope you'll come back someday.
Great. Yeah. Thank you very much for having me.
What an absolutely fascinating man, and this sounds incredible. I was struck by the sentence that he quoted. He wasn't sure if it was from the name that he gave, but I think it might actually be from Frank O'Connor, because he wrote a how-to guide and essay, book-length essay on the short story form that's called The Lonely Voice. So I think that maybe, I'm just guessing, that maybe that's where that incredible quote came from that he quoted. Local fires. Sounds really good. I can't wait to get to it. I haven't been focused on reading so much for obvious reasons this week, and so I haven't finished anything. I'm very close to finishing a couple books that I have Zoom chats about this weekend, so my reading will be cut out for me between now and then, but nothing to tell you about that I finished. I have one bail and preliminary check-in on another, and that will be the sum total of this week's Friday Reads. So, my first bail of 2025, which is quite astounding. I've usually bailed on 15 books at least by now. Over my bailing neurosis. I don't know what the hell it was. I think it might come back. But anyway, here we go. I bailed on Praiseworthy by Alexis Wright and left Heidi of My Reading Life and Joe Smith to their own devices on it. I read the first 50 pages and I told them I thought I was probably going to bail. And then I read one more page and I bailed. It's just too much like work. I don't want to read stuff that makes me work if I'm not enjoying. If there's nothing else going on, it's just work to understand what is she saying? Who are these people? I would like to read a good book review on it, find out what I missed. But no, this is not my kind of book at all. I shall not be praiseworthy about Praiseworthy. It's a Marmite book. People either love it or hate it, and I would have to say I hated it, so it's done. In happier news, I am maybe a chapter and a half into Queen James by Gareth Russell. Just loving it. Gareth Russell's a wonderful historian, popular historian. This is a personal biography more than a political one, but there's lots of politics in it too. And so I'm just at the stage when James, he was James the Sixth, I believe, of Scotland, and then became James the First of England. His childhood. He's still a baby. But it's all about his mom, Mary Queen of Scots, and I kind of forgotten that's who his mom was. And I have never, she's one of the most famous queens in the world. She is. But I've never really known much, anything on that micro level, the minutiae of her life, and that is just fascinating. It opens with her, James's father was, I don't know if it was the first or second or third husband, but he, Darnley, I think his name was not very trustworthy. He had staged a rebellion against his wife when she was pregnant because he thought that his wife, Queen Mary, was having an affair with her Italian advisor and staged a coup, and that Italian guy was stabbed to death. And then later she was involved in questionably whether she was involved in a plot to kill him after pretending to reconcile with him. And then she hooked up with the next guy. I think his name is Lord Bothwell. He wasn't very trustworthy, and there's some historical theories that he raped her and then she married him. But others say no, they were already having an affair when she was with her other husband. But anyway, King James, the baby, was born and all that, and then Queen Mary gets sent into exile to live with her lovely, very warm and friendly cousin, Queen Elizabeth I of England. But she's held in leisurely detention there. Meanwhile, her baby son is put on the Scottish throne with a series of regents. It's fabulous, absolutely fabulous. And what Gareth Russell was demonstrating is that King James, throughout his adult life, would easily be traumatized or shocked or in fear of his life in an unreasonable way. And these early childhood events kind of show why he had that paranoia about suddenly people coming to murder him or people around him. So just fabulous. Yeah, love it. And that, boys and girls, is all I got to say this week, because I'm busy being married and reconstituting myself as a bookish husband. People, have a great week. I sure as hell plan to. Bye. Thanks for watching.